Good morning, students. I hope you guys are doing well. Welcome back to another Monday morning or Monday devotional using our 7 arrows method. This morning we're going to be in Daniel 6, verses 10 through 24. This is a story of Daniel and the lion's den. So go ahead and read that and then come back to this video and let's dive into our 7 arrows method. So we see the first arrow. What does this passage say? We can simply just say that Daniel trusts in God and he's saved from the lions, right? That's simply just what's going on in this passage. And then we can ask the question, our next arrow, what did this passage mean to its original audience? And if you know anything about the book of Daniel, you know there's another story of God doing something pretty crazy and saving his people. We know Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace and all that God does in that story. So we see in the book of Daniel, just even those two instances, this theme of God saving his people from just crazy situations. And I think we learned two things from that. The original audience who was witnessing that would have learned something, and anyone who's reading the book of Daniel, the original audience that was reading it, they would have learned these things. They would have seen that God cares about his people and protects them, and that God is more powerful than any king, any president, any ruler in this world. God is more powerful. So that's something that the original audience would have seen in that, and that even we can see today. So what does this passage tell us about God? It's interesting. The king wonders, is God going to save Daniel? And the answer is clearly yes, he does. So we can see that God is a rescuer. God protects his people and saves his people. And we know that in any situation, if God so wills, he can save and deliver his people, which is comforting to know that we have a God who can do that. So what does this passage tell us about man? And I think it's really interesting. In verse 20, the king says this, Daniel, servant of the living God. This king was a pagan king. He would not have been a worshiper of God or a follower of God, but through Daniel's faithfulness, he's brought to this understanding that God is a living God. This pagan king, after watching Daniel live his life, begins to call God the living God, the one true God. So you and I, in our difficult situations and circumstances in life, can be used to point lost people to God, which is amazing. God can use our difficult situations to bring people to him. What does this passage demand of you and I? What is this passage calling us to do? And I think we can say clearly it's calling us to trust people, or to trust God, not people. It's calling us to trust God, right? We as Christians can often kind of say, oh, what should I do in my life? What should be the main goal of my life? And we'll be like, oh, I want to go on mission trips and I want to do this for the Lord and that for the Lord. How about this? How about being fully dependent on God and trusting in God? How about that being your main goal in life? And when you get to that point, like Daniel was, when you're fully dependent on God, that's when God can really use you to do miraculous things, to do amazing things for his kingdom, when you're fully trusting in him. So I think that is one thing that this passage demands from us. And then our next arrow, how does this passage change the way I relate to other people? Towards the end of the passage, we kind of see this little weird thing that happens when God judges all the people who threw or like kind of did all the lying to get Daniel into the lion's den. God throws them into the lion's den and then they're killed, which is kind of weird and for our culture. But what we see there is that God is a just God, and that even when we are wronged, when we're persecuted for our faith, we know that we have a just God who's protecting us and watching out for us. We don't have to seek our own justice. We don't have to seek revenge, but we know that ultimately we can leave that up to God, and that allows us to love our enemies, to turn the other cheek, and show love in those different situations. And lastly, how does this prompt us to pray? I don't know what you prayed after you read this passage, but you can most certainly thank God for his faithfulness and protection. And we can also pray that God would make us trusting like Daniel was, that we would be people who trust in the Lord. And we can ultimately look to Jesus and the life that he lived on earth and see how he perfectly trusted the Father, even to the point of going to the cross and being crucified for us. So I hope these help you. I hope these different arrows helped you understand the text a little bit more, and I hope you benefited from it greatly. I will see you guys next time.